Hello there, you're watching All24 News Morning Show program, and as usual we have here with us our special journalist Miriam Ziyan. Good morning, Miriam.
Good morning, Melissa, and good morning, dear audiences. I hope you're doing great and you're having a beautiful morning and a great weekend. Today we're having an expert to clarify something that concerns everyone, something that has been a daily struggle for every one of us during the last 2 years. You have guessed, it's COVID-19. We have with us morning Dr. Bharat, a senior clinical lecturer at University of Exeter Medical School, and who has years of experience in communication disease control and infectious disease management. Thank you for accepting the invite, Dr. Bharat.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. To begin with, Dr. Bharat, the World Health Organization said Wednesday it hoped that COVID-19 would no longer be a public health emergency in 2023, and will discuss criteria for declaring an end to the emergency phase on January. Dr. Bharat, are we close to an end of the pandemic?
No, the shortest possible answer is no. We are in a much better place today than we were 2 years ago. But do we see that the COVID-19 pandemic is over? Absolutely not. We have a big problem already starting in China. Africa, I'm not certain about the level of taking up vaccines and therefore protecting its population. And then, of course, there is the concern that we may have variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus emerging. So we are far away from saying COVID-19 is over.
All right. Now, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the weekly COVID-19 death toll was a year ago. The death toll was around a fifth of what it was a year ago. I mean, it has decreased drastically, but it's still far too high today. So it seems like talking about the end of the pandemic is a bit hard when hearing about these figures, isn't it?
It is, and so I can give you my first-hand experience. I deal with outbreaks in nursing homes, hospitals, and such places. One of the things that we have noticed in December 2022 is whilst we've got outbreaks, the people are not becoming seriously ill, being hospitalized and dying. Of course, some do, but much fewer compared to 2 years ago. And that is a testament to people having immunity through the vaccines or through natural infection. And that immunity is protecting people from severe disease. But we still need to be careful not to get infected just because it's not causing severe disease. Because in some people, unfortunately, it goes on to create what we call a long COVID syndrome, whereby even after the infection has come and gone, the immune system keeps on working and can harm their internal organs.
I understand. We still have to be careful. And despite the massive global vaccine rollout, only 1 in 5 people in the world's lowest income countries have been vaccinated, while diagnostic and treatment remain inaccessible for many in low-income countries. Africa, for example, lags behind the rest of the world in COVID-19 vaccination coverage. If this part of the world isn't protected and prepared for another possible emergency, won't it affect the rest of the world?
You're absolutely right, 100%, because I have been saying this to anyone who will listen. We are not well until everyone else is well too. So we need to make sure that the low-income countries not only get their vaccines, but they get the logistic support to deliver the vaccines. And similarly, the logistic support to do the early diagnosis, containment, and management. And if you don't do all of those important things, i.e. help the low-income countries, it will become the richer nations' problems too. Because look, give you an example. Variants arose from South Africa, and within a few weeks, those variants had spread all over the world. So wherever you are multiplying and reproducing viruses, you can have variants emerge, and those variants could be a setback. So of course we must support the low-income countries and give them all the technological support as well as cheap, free, easy supply of the vaccines.
Exactly, and since we have talked about emergency preparedness, which parts of the world, in your opinion, or according to statistics, are most vulnerable to the virus? Is it due to the lack of vaccination and treatment means that people maybe are vulnerable?
So Africa and other poorer nations, they all remain vulnerable because in terms of emergency preparedness, a lot of the plans have got a Western American slant to it. Give you an example. In the United Kingdom, Europe, and in United States of America, one of the emergency actions was lockdown, in inverted commas. Well, lockdown means you stay at home and the government pays your wages. In Africa and in many other poorer nations, that is just not possible. You know, people need to earn the bread on the day to feed their family on the same day. They have no savings. So such plans need to reflect the needs of the poorer nations in terms of emergency preparedness and how they would manage. Similarly, there is quite a huge failure in the logistics chain. A lot of vaccines were unfortunately wasted because they couldn't get to the distant village in time, invite the people, have the needles, have the syringes, have the record keeping, and all of those things are equally as important as the supply of vaccines.
All right. Now, another question. In the US and other countries, people are encouraged to get booster doses every 6 months. Can we continue living at this rhythm? And until when should we stop getting those booster shots?
That's a lovely question. And I feel we cannot carry on saying booster upon booster. The global strategy would be suppress infections globally. So going back to low-income countries where only 20% of the people have been immunized, if you suppress infections there, we will need fewer boosters in the richer nations. And I feel there will be a plateauing. So some people in Western countries have had 5th vaccine by now. And I think eventually we will reach a plateau whereby we feel we do not need to carry on boosting. When that stage arises, I don't know, nobody knows. But I know one thing that we can do to circumvent having frequent boosters is suppress infections in the low-income nations.
I see. Now, in the old continent, the Council of the European Union has updated its travel recommendations to lift all COVID-19 related restrictions in the EU. Is this decline of measures and testing risky?
No, I think it is a measured response now. And the key fact is a highly immunized population traveling around, whilst they may be infected and infectious, they are not becoming seriously ill. And because they're not becoming seriously ill, if you have been immunized, then it is important to remove restrictions, because we also need to live and we also need to trade so that we can live, and we need to return back to normality. And it's a reasonably measured action.
Talking about living, going back to trade, and maybe living with the virus, can we say, or can we talk about living without the virus?
I don't think so. This virus is in the human population as well as in the animal population. And because it is also in the human and animal population, it is very difficult at this stage to say we are going to eliminate it. So if we're not going to be able to eliminate it, we've got to learn how to live with it. And one way to live with it is to be highly immunized. So let me give you another example. We've got the measles virus, for example, and we live with it. We've lived with it for hundreds and hundreds of years. The virus is still present. We are still here. But what we do is we immunize our children soon after birth, and they remain protected because we have a wonderful vaccine. And I think that will also be the case for SARS-CoV-2, where you have a highly immunized population, and therefore we live with it.
All right, a last question would be, what's the best policy countries can adopt to avoid another disastrous episode?
It is a global thing. No country on its own can say we're going to be better than the other, because we are a global world. But what we can do, what we must do, is better biological practices. So when you have lots of animals, chickens, pigs, and humans living together, and we are messing around with nature, we're eating things picked up from caves, forests, underwater, etc., outbreaks like this and new emerging viruses will happen. So we know the science, we know what to do, we also know what not to do. And it is a wake-up call that to make it better, we shouldn't do things that are biohazards. There are a lot of biohazards, and we should be aware of them and not do them.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Bharat, for your intervention. Thank you, dear viewers. You've got it. The virus